Chapter 5. Laughter greeted Luke as he got out of his truck and hurried up the front stairs of his mum's new beachfront house. He was glad to get together with his family today. For the last 5 days, all he'd thought of was Razelle. He missed her and was worried about her. When he'd last seen her at the Donovan Ranch, she had told him a firm no to them dating, but he was convinced he'd detected fear in her eyes that day. What was she afraid of? He'd tried texting her cell phone, but got no answer. His next step was to stop by the cafe. He had to see her. But he wasn't able to talk to her there either. Today, he was happy to spend time with his family, but he would try again to get in touch with Razelle. 2 months ago, Eliza Stevenson had sold her old house in favor of a beach house along the lake in their small town. She had told each of her sons that she wanted to be closer to their families so she could get to know her grandchildren better. Even though Luke missed the old house, he was glad his mum now lived nearby. Just as he reached the front door, it opened quickly. "Luke, you're here. Your mother will be so happy to see you." Therese greeted him and opened the door wide. Her brown eyes sparkled and her smile grew big. Therese had been Eliza's cook and companion for years now. All his brothers had got together to pay for someone to be with their mom and cook for her. His mother didn't think it was a good idea at the time, but now Mom admitted she wouldn't know how to get everything done without Therese. Luke kissed her cheek. "Hello, Therese. I can smell the barbecue cooking already. You're a wonder." "Aw, thank you, Luke. But I know what you really want. You want me to save the best pieces of barbecue for you." Luke chuckled. "You have me figured out. Is it working?" "Oh, maybe." Therese grinned as she led the way to the French doors that opened up onto the large back deck. She waved at the family who was on the beach. "Everyone, Luke's here." Therese announced his name, and his younger brother Zach, his older brothers and their wives turned to greet him. Luke hurried down the stairs from the deck and out onto the sandy beach. His mother stood to her feet from her comfy beach chair and gave him a big hug. "Ah, Luke, it's so good to see you." He wrapped his arms around his mother, showing with his actions what he could never really find the words to say. "I wouldn't miss a Stevenson family celebration. Happy housewarming, Mum. I love you." Luke leaned down and kissed her cheek. His mother's smile lit up her whole face and her blue eyes sparkled. "Thank you, Luke. I love you too." She removed the large beach towel from his shoulder and looked down at his leg. "I know you said Millie Donovan took care of your leg, but I wanted to see for myself." Her brows puckered together in worry. Luke looked down at the wrinkled red scar that ran down his thigh. "It doesn't look good, Mum, but it's not completely healed yet. Just give it time." His mother straightened her shoulders, worry simmering in her blue eyes. "Is the matter finished now, Luke?" Luke knew she was asking if he was going to have any more run-ins with the guy who did this to him. "Yes, Mum, I certainly don't have any reason to see Sloane again." "Good." His mother let out a sigh of relief. Luke placed a comforting arm around her shoulders. "I'm fine, Mum." "I know you are, Luke, and I'm grateful for that." Eliza Stevenson straightened her shoulders, smiling up at him once more. "Well then, let's enjoy this afternoon together." His brothers and their wives were soaking up the sun. Luke waved towards them. "I see Zach's enjoying himself, entertaining Daniel, Walker, and little Delaney." Luke grinned as he watched his younger brother build sandcastles with the toddlers. "It looks like they are showing him how it's done." The little ones were busy molding and shaping the sand into shapes that made a crooked-looking sandcastle. Between the tickling and the giggles, they were having a lot of fun. "Yep, it's been nice to have our own built-in babysitter." Jack grinned, looking at Bella, who was pregnant with her second child. "Just wait until you have baby number 2, Jack. Suddenly you'll be busier than ever and find that you need that built-in babysitter more than you ever did." Adam grinned and looked adoringly at the new baby daughter he held in his arms. Al smiled and adjusted the baby's blanket around their little daughter. "It's true. We're busier now, but our little Katie makes it all worthwhile. It won't be long before Gabe and Rory have a new little one. Do you know if you're having a boy or a girl?" Al asked Rory, who had a smaller baby bump than Bella. "We wanted to be surprised," Rory grinned. "But my 3 aunts are chomping at the bit because they really want to know. They already spoil little Delaney, so it'll be really fun for them and for us when this new little one is born." Rory rubbed her pregnant belly lightly and smiled. Luke watched his brothers with their wives, enjoying the back and forth banter. Somewhere deep inside, a desire was sparked. He wanted that loving banter with his wife. He wanted children to play with. He wanted a family of his own to love. Razelle's beautiful face lingered in his mind. Luke pushed thoughts of love aside. He didn't believe in love. But Luke really wanted that land, and he'd only get it if he married. Maybe there was a way he could have what he wanted after all. He desperately needed to talk to one of his brothers and hear their much-needed advice. It wasn't long before they all headed to the barbecue, enjoying Teresa's delicious food. When they finished eating, Therese carried a beautiful cake to the table. Luke spoke up. "Happy housewarming, Mum." "Hear, hear." Gabe spoke, and everyone around chimed in with their congratulations. Eliza Stevenson looked around at each of her sons, their wives, and her grandchildren, a contented smile on her face. "You have all made me so happy today just by being here. I'm grateful for each of you." "Ah, Mom, we're thankful to have you nearby," Luke spoke softly, squeezing his mom's arm. Moisture filled Eliza's eyes as she reached over and squeezed his hand. "I know, I'll love it. More time with the grandchildren." Soon the grandchildren were busy eating cake with the help of their parents. It didn't take long before the little ones were tuckered out. After the grandchildren fell asleep, they were tucked into their toddler beds that Grandma had added to 2 rooms in the house. Therese offered to listen for them when they woke up. The adults sat on the deck, sipping their iced tea and enjoying the view of the orange-red glow of the sunset, shining a narrow path across the lake. Restless, Luke carried his drink to the edge of the deck, his gaze taking in the swirl of colors reflected on the water. It wasn't long before all 4 of his brothers joined him there. Jack bumped his shoulder. "How have things been going at Grand's old cabin, Luke?" "It's been going good. I've renovated the inside and almost finished the outside deck. It's been a big project." But you know all about handling big projects. Luke was reminded of Jack's creative design business and his most recent project of the adventure park just outside of Paradise Lake. "Yeah, I do. But you did this by yourself without hiring out. Dad would be proud of you, Luke." "It's true, Luke," Adam spoke up. "But I'm curious what you're going to do about keeping that cabin and the land." "Yeah, big brother Luke. Have you found a wife to marry yet?" Zach spoke up, a teasing grin on his face. The corners of Luke's lips turned up, and he stood for a moment, not saying anything. "Maybe. You know, Luke, your one-word answers are going to be the death of us all." Gabe, the talkative one of the bunch, teased him. "Exactly what do you mean, maybe? Does this mean you've found a woman you love and want to marry?" Luke expelled a breath. He couldn't help it that he was the quiet one. He always had been. But he supposed he should explain himself better. "Not love, but someone I could possibly marry." "Well, it's a start. Remember, each of us began our relationships with a marriage of convenience." Jack looked over at Adam and Gabe as he spoke. "Yeah, I know, Jack. Problem is, she's refusing to go on a date with me so that we can talk." Luke looked over at each of his older brothers and shrugged. "Did she say why, Luke?" "Just that she can't talk about it and that I'd be better off forgetting about her." Luke ran a hand through his hair, his emotions all in a tangle every time he thought about Razelle. Maybe you need to go caveman on her." At Jack's suggestion, all his brothers laughed. "What exactly do you mean by that, Jack?" Shaking his head, Luke looked over at Jack expectantly. Jack grinned. "You go to her house, get her attention somehow, and convince her to marry you." "I might get in trouble with her mother. I've been told she's very strict and controlling." Luke shook his head. "So, get creative," Jack insisted. "Does she have a window to her bedroom? Leave a note or serenade her. Do something to get her attention without her mother finding out." "Well, that might work." The more Luke thought of the idea, the more he liked it. "You've given me something to think about, Jack." "Well, you do want your inheritance from Grand, right?" Luke nodded. Sometimes, to get what you really want, you have to be persistent and creative. Jack nudged his shoulder. Whatever you do, don't give up, Luke. If you like her, marry her. Thanks, Jack. Luke nodded and smiled at each of his brothers. I'll think about what you've said. As Luke drove back to the cabin, he made a decision. Maybe there was something to Jack's advice. He had no trouble being persistent and creative. He'd done that all his life. He would do whatever it took to win Razelle over, even if it meant using caveman tactics. Hey there, Hudson, Luke called his best friend the next day. Hi, Luke. How are you feeling? I'm better now. You can tell your mom my leg is healing fine, thanks to her. I'm glad, Luke. Waylon's on the mend, too. Good. I'm glad. Luke could hear the relief in Hudson's voice. So, what's up, Luke? Well, I was wondering if you might have Cassie's phone number or address. I need to talk to her. I need to know how I can reach her friend. Razelle's gone all silent on me, and I don't know how to get in touch. I'm sorry, man. Hudson was rustling papers on the side of the phone. Yes, I do have her cell number. Hudson rambled off the numbers. You could also stop by the coffee shop and talk to Razelle there. I already tried that. Luke sighed heavily. Her mother is keeping her in the kitchen and won't even let her come to the front counter. That's crazy, Luke. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Anyway, I'll see if I can get more answers. Luke sighed. Thanks, man. Talk soon. Luke ended the call and quickly called Cassie. There was no time like the present. Cassie here. Hello, Cassie. It's Luke. Hey, Luke. How's your leg doing? Cassie sounded surprised to hear from him. It's slowly healing. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Cassie said warmly, Why did you call, Luke? Luke hesitated. I wanted to ask if you've heard from Razelle. I've texted and she hasn't gotten back to me. I haven't heard from her either. Cassie sighed on the other end of the phone line. Sadly, my guess is that her mother has taken her phone away and hasn't allowed her contact with anyone. What? Luke was stunned. Razelle is an adult. That's barbaric. Parents aren't supposed to do that to their adult children. Well, Roz's mother is very strict and controlling, and she's done that, and more, a few times before. Luke paced the small cabin and stepped out onto the deck, needing some air. Some kind of protective instinct rose up inside of him. Then how am I supposed to talk to her or see her? You could try leaving a note tied to the string that hangs from the tree outside her bedroom window like I do. Or you could try knocking on her window, but you'd want to make sure you did that at midnight or later so her mother doesn't hear you. Cassie spoke so matter-of-fact, like this was something she did all the time. Luke's heart pummeled against his chest. You're saying this has happened before to Razelle? Oh, yes, many times. That's why we have a system figured out. Luke ran a hand through his hair. Well, I'll do what I can then. Good. And remember, you need to be really quiet. You don't want her mother to hear you, Cassie said. After Luke hung up, he stood on his deck, his one hand in a white-knuckled grip against the railing. His mind was racing. He hadn't known how hard it was for Razelle. It was crazy that her mother locked her up like some kind of dangerous animal. His thoughts were rattled by what Cassie told him. It was pure nonsense what was going on in Razelle's life. He needed to help her. Walking into the cabin, he penned a note. Tomorrow night, I'll be knocking on your window at midnight. We need to talk. Signed, L. Luke waited until it was midnight before he drove to Razelle's house. He parked his truck a block away and walked down the back alley and quietly slipped into their backyard. A large oak tree was nestled against the house, stretching up to Razelle's window. Looking up, he saw all was dark in all three of the windows that faced the backyard on the second floor. Luke hoped she would see his note before he came tomorrow night. He searched for the string and finally found it. He tied the note to a rock, making sure it was tied tight. As he walked away and drove home, Luke's heartbeat accelerated. He was really looking forward to seeing Razelle again. Razelle slipped into her pajamas. It was 11 in the evening, and she had just finished helping her mother to fall asleep after one of her bad headaches. She had given her a large pot of herbal tea that would help her sleep. She was glad her mother was at long last sound asleep. Whenever her mother fell asleep, it felt like she finally had a few hours of freedom. Although freedom wasn't something she really had right now, but she would make the best of it. Tonight, she was happy to finally have a chance to stay awake for a while and read. Razelle got comfortable on her bed and dived into a favorite novel. Sunbeam lay on her lap, purring loudly. She ran her fingers through her cat's thick fur as she read. She got lost in the romance. All of a sudden, a loud scratching sound pierced the stillness. Setting her book down, she picked up her cat and walked to the window. As she moved the curtain aside, she gasped and put her hand on her chest. Luke Stevenson stood outside her window. Gently, she pushed up the window so she could talk to him. "What are you doing here, Luke?" Razelle whispered. Luke grinned as he sat crouched on the slanted roof outside her window. "I see you didn't get my note." "What note?" "Cassie told me to tie a note to the rope on your tree and you'd get it, but you must have been busy." Luke stared into her eyes as if looking for something. "Sorry, I didn't have time. It's been a very long day." Sunbeam jumped out of her arms and Razelle crossed her arms over her chest. "Why are you here, Luke?" "Cassie also said most likely your mother took your phone and has stopped you from contacting your friends. Is that true?" Razelle expelled a long breath. "Cassie talks too much." She made a mental note to tell her friend not to share so much of her personal life with men she didn't know that well. "So, is it true?" "Yes, but why should that matter to you?" Razelle didn't want to let down her guard. There was some part of her, deep inside, that somehow knew if she let down the walls around her heart when she was near Luke, it could only end in pain. Luke cocked his head to the side, staring at her silently for a moment. His warm brown eyes, like melted chocolate, affected her deeply. Too deeply. "You know why. I like you, Razelle, and I really want to get to know you better." Razelle giggled softly. "Even knowing all of this?" She waved one arm encompassing herself and all her circumstances into that picture. "Yes, I do. So will you give me a chance?" Luke reached for her hands, holding them between his own. Warm tingles shot up her arm at his touch. He was too charming by half. Could she do this? "Sure, we can chat now and again, but we need to keep this our secret." Razelle didn't want to experience another one of her mother's outbursts. "I promise, Razelle." Heat crept from her neck up to her cheeks at the intensity of Luke's gaze. "All right, then." Razelle didn't know what in the world she was agreeing to. It was crazy. She nodded and smiled slightly. "Good. I'm glad you agree." "I'll be back, Razelle." Luke kissed her hands. Her hands began to tingle where his warm lips touched her skin. She watched him climb down the tree and didn't close her window until he slipped out of their backyard. What had she just agreed to do? Wiping the perspiration from her brow, Razelle hung up the mop. She surveyed the kitchen floor of the coffee shop, double-checked that she'd cleaned every spot. Her mother had been especially tough on her, and tonight she'd had to do a thorough cleaning of the fridge, the grill, the pantry, and mop the floor. It was late, and she was so very tired. The creak of the stairway warned Razelle that her mother was coming. She'd just tidied up the bucket and put away the wet rags when her mother showed up in the kitchen doorway. Her mother's dark brown eyes were cool as she surveyed the work her daughter did that evening. Razelle really hoped she wouldn't force her to redo it as she had many times before. Finally, her mother looked at her and forcibly said, "I'm satisfied for now, Razelle." Razelle knew better than to expect any thank you or appreciation for her work. Not once in all her growing up years did she remember her mother praising her or thanking her for something she'd done. She'd learned long ago that it was simply expected of her, and she needed to get her work done or there would be trouble. Nodding, Razelle hung up her apron and headed up the stairs to their apartment. Her mother followed. "Good night, Mother," Razelle spoke softly. Her mother gave her a curt nod, staring after her as she closed the door to her bedroom. Distrust and a simmering impatience in her mother's words and actions had only gotten worse over the past few weeks. Razelle didn't know how much longer she could live under this pressure. If anything, she felt more unloved and fearful with each passing day. The only thing that saved her this past week was Luke's handwritten notes. Every day for the past 6 days he'd written to her. He shared about what he was fixing in the cabin and about the housewarming they had for his mother. She had written that she was exhausted after working really long days at her mother's cafe. Razelle even told him that someday she wanted to go see some of these places that she could only read about in books. They had gotten to know each other better through the messages they sent to each other. But Luke's note last night had been different. After rereading his note, and even now as she waited, she was a pile of nerves. He'd written, "I have something important to ask you. I'll see you tomorrow night at midnight. Signed, L." Razelle lay in bed, pretending to be asleep, when the door to her bedroom opened. She opened her eyes slightly, only to see her mother staring at her. When at last the door closed again, she sighed in relief. Her mother had come to her bedroom to check on her almost every night since she'd began her punishment. Tears pricked her eyes. She remembered a few times in her childhood when her mother had been kind to her, but since she'd become an adult, things had changed. Now she was expected to work in the cafe and to help her mother heal from those disabling headaches. Now that she was grown up, it seemed her mother believed her only daughter no longer needed affection. But that couldn't be further from the truth. She needed the love of a mother now more than ever. A light tap on her window made Razelle jerk suddenly out of bed. Quickly wiping the tears from her eyes, she slowly opened the window. Luke's smile quickly faded when he saw her. "Why have you been crying, Razelle?" "It's been a long day. I think I'm just tired." Luke was silent for a long moment, his expression serious as he looked at her. "I think it's more than that, but I'll let it go for now. I'm hoping that soon you will feel like you can talk to me about anything." What did he mean by that? Razelle had no idea, but she decided to let it go. He'd come here tonight for a specific reason. "Your note said you wanted to ask me something?" Razelle waited, rubbing her hands up and down each arm to ward off the cool night air. "Well, first I need to tell you a cautionary tale." Razelle nodded, and Luke began. He told her of his great-grandfather's death, and about the stipulation in his will to marry by his 27th birthday if he wanted to inherit the land. "When is your birthday, Luke?" "I have only 2 weeks left." Luke swallowed. "You're right, that is a cautionary tale." Razelle shook her head, the corners of her mouth turning up in a slight smile. "Well, 2 weeks isn't a lot of time." "No, it's not." "Well then, what will you do, Luke?" Luke stood up for a moment before kneeling down, a look of determination in the set of his jaw. Razelle backed away from the window and one hand flew to her mouth. She silently shook her head. "No, Luke, you aren't asking me what I think you are." Luke nodded. "Yes, I am. Marry me, Razelle. This will be a fake marriage and something that will help us both. You'll have your freedom back." Luke reached for her hands, squeezing them gently. "Stay married to me for 1 year and I'll give you $1 million. After the year is up, you'll have the freedom to do what you want." Luke's brown eyes searched hers with a sincerity that she found hard to resist. Freedom. That word was like a foreign language to her, something she'd never known. I don't know what to say." "Just say yes, Razelle," Luke persisted. She studied him, surprise and shock lingering in her words. "A marriage of convenience. Do people do that sort of thing nowadays?" "All I know is it seems to be a thing in my family." Razelle shook her head from side to side, thinking of the craziness of his idea, and for considering it. All of a sudden she needed to hear from him again what his plans were. "And what exactly do you get out of this, Luke?" "Grand's land. I've wanted that land since I was a little boy visiting the place with my great-grandfather, granddad, and my dad. It's the one place I feel like I belong." Luke shrugged and looked away, and Razelle could sense a vulnerable place in him that she realized he probably didn't share with many people. The longing in Luke's voice resonated with the longing in her heart, but she couldn't tell him that. It's not like he was a complete stranger. One of her best friends had married Luke's brother. She knew this man came from a family that were committed to each other and treated people well. Not only that, he had already put his life on the line for her when they were at the camp. Razelle believed she could trust him, but it didn't take away the fact that she was consumed with fear and guilt at the thought of leaving her mother. But doubt lingered at what he was asking of her. "I just don't know if I can do that, Luke." Luke leaned closer and whispered, "Just think about it, Razelle. That's all I'm asking. Will you do that?" "All right, Luke. I can't promise to agree, but I can promise to think about it." Razelle's voice caught in her throat at his whispered words. "Thank you for thinking about it, Razelle." Luke's gaze swept over her face one more time, as if memorizing the way she looked right now. "I have to leave town for a couple of days, but I'll be back in 3 days to take you away from here and marry you." Razelle stood there dumbfounded by his bold words. Before she could say anything, however, he suddenly leaned over and kissed her cheek. "I'll be back. Wait for me, Razelle." Warm tingles began in her cheek where he'd kissed her. She put her hand on her cheek, her eyes glued to Luke as he disappeared into the dark night. Razelle was stunned at his idea of a marriage of convenience. Was she crazy to even consider it?